So you've both set out a variety of things that the next president of the United States might do in order to increase the amount of financing available for clean energy. I want to start out by asking you both just sort of a realistic political question. You know, if you're just playing the odds, we're going to end up with a Democratic president and a split Congress. It might very well be the Democrats retake the Senate, but you probably still have the Republicans in control of the House. So two questions. Number one, if we still have a split Congress, how serious of a problem is that from the standpoint of accomplishing the type of financing goals that both of you are talking about? And second of all, do you see a realistic package of financing measures that the next president could get through a split Congress?
You go first.
Dan.
So a Republican House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democrat-led White House. So essentially what we've got now.
A little bit before.
So I'm something of an optimist when it comes to what you can accomplish in this area, because I think increasingly folks across this political spectrum realize there's money to be made in clean energy, and I'm hopeful that over time people are, in fact, a broadening number of people are realizing the climate crisis that we face. So, you know, when you have, you know, states like Texas and Kansas and Iowa, you know, stepping up in a pretty big way in support of the renewable energy industries in those states, I think we've got a shot. And with some new leadership in the White House, I think there's a lot that can be done. So you know, obviously this agenda could get done even more quickly if the Democrats take the House. But I think there's a decent probability that some of what we need to get done can get done. In terms of financing mechanism, you know, there's a lot on the table right now. And there's a lot of things that we could do that would not only work for renewables, but work for capturing carbon dioxide, advancing nuclear power, some of the things that we need to do for a complete zero carbon approach to our energy system in the U.S.
Okay, but if you're introducing a package,
Well,
giving advice on what would be the 2 or 3 sort of anchor measures in that package?
Go ahead.
well, I just want to add that we just saw the investment tax credit get renewed, and while it didn't help everyone, as Dan pointed out, it did get passed, and it was so different than what we worked on in 2008 because of the jobs and because of the fact that there's no sacrifice anymore. Renewable energy, electric vehicles, their costs are coming down so that you don't have to sacrifice clean energy for price. And so what's not to like about that? If you're a red, blue, or purple governor and politician, those technologies, those businesses are creating jobs in your state, and that wasn't the case. I mean, there are over 200,000 solar jobs in this country. That's 3 times the coal mining industry. And everything is flipping, and so really it's at your own risk as a politician if you say no to sectors that are fueling job creation and quality job creation. So I don't think it's as big a battle as it was.
In terms of mechanisms, I think you start with R&D, and I'm hopeful. As much as I said, it's a heavy lift. I think given the breadth of energy R&D from nuclear to carbon to renewables and efficiency, I think there probably is a package that they can agree on with a new president pushing it. I do think some of these long-term financing mechanisms that I mentioned, I think there's broad bipartisan support for most of those right now. Because again, they benefit clean energy technologies across the spectrum. And you know, I think the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the FERC, has a lot to say about what's happening in this energy complex of ours, what's happening in interstate movement of energy. And so I think the new president is going to have a chance to make some changes there and give that agency some new authority and some new direction. So there's a whole package of things, but we'll see.
I would add to that, allocating some funding for unlocking the data and making that widely available, because that will build the infrastructure of the future. That would be a very bipartisan thing to do, and very helpful in terms of getting rid of the overhang of incumbents and monopolies and all of that.
So I'm curious, Nancy, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that this is obviously a global market now. If you look at what other countries are doing in order to try to promote clean energy through financing mechanisms, are there lessons that we can learn elsewhere?
There's all kinds of great incentives. I mean, the fact that Norway has more EVs per capita is not an accident. They have a tax on gas fueled cars that make electric vehicles very economical by comparison, and it's a very substantial benefit. You see Germany, of course, favoring not just renewables, but also now with a storage rebate. And there are a lot of lessons we can learn from other countries where they are passing laws that are making very bold commitments. The advantage that we have here in the US is our capital markets, is our innovation, our ability to start new companies and redefine really what energy looks like. And so I think that we should play to our strengths. That's why some of my suggestions were things like learning the benefits that we had from the ITC and the PTC and the electric vehicle rebates and applying that to storage. Because storage is, it's trite by this time, everyone says it, but it is a game changer. It really does allow us to use renewables to transfer something that is episodic into more of a baseload resource.
I'd add that there are huge investment opportunities that U.S. investors have in other countries. So you look at a country like India that went to Paris and made a commitment to build 100,000 megawatts, 100 gigawatts of solar by 2022. That's a big target. But if India continues to make the changes in its approach to electricity, its regulatory system, its financing systems, they will increase the interest that investors in other countries have in putting money into the utility scale system and the distributed system in that country. So there's a lot that other countries can do on their own, but there's a lot that the global investment world can do to move some of these agendas forward in critical places like India, the third largest carbon emitter on the planet.
For example, Tanzania, the former president there started a 1 million solar roofs program, just like we had in California. The only difference being that 1 million goes a lot further in Tanzania than it does in California, just because it's not as populous an area. So having that kind of a policy attracts venture investment from this country into companies that will sell into those regions. And so it helps us at home, and it helps us solve one of the most important problems of our age, which is energy poverty, which is directly linked to economic poverty.
So both of you are clearly optimists in this particular area, and I think justifiably so. But I actually want to end with sort of the opposite question, which is, what do you worry about when you look out there at whether or not we're actually able to finance the type of energy transition that we need in order to address climate change? What are your one or two greatest concerns?
Well, I have a concern, and I referenced it earlier, and sort of the motivation for writing our reports, is that the information is not robust enough, and people, they don't understand that we've always subsidized energy, and so they say that renewables are more subsidized than fossil, and that's just clearly not the case, and people should do their homework. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. People do that when they look at this whole net metering, which is not the long-term solution. We're not going to be metering for eternity, but it's important now, and the analyses that you see are often incomplete. They will look at the risks or the costs without identifying the benefits, and so you come up with skewed results that public utilities commissions then make policy around. And so I think, and it's a great role that universities can help play, is to lend more rigor and more depth to these studies so that we actually know what the value streams are.
Two quick things. One, I worry that we don't spend enough time on our lowest cost energy option, which is, of course, energy efficiency. People love this phrase, low-hanging fruit grows back. My favorite addition to that is, they love the phrase, it's low-hanging fruit. I love to say, low-hanging fruit grows back. We're always advancing energy efficiency technologies. You know, the incandescent gets replaced by the compact fluorescent, which gets replaced by the LEDs. And it is our cheapest energy source. It's not very sexy. It's tough in many respects to move money in the direction of energy efficiency investments. We've begun to crack the code. There are some interesting ideas. There's some people in this room who are working on that. So that's worry number one. Let's not leave behind the cheap stuff that we're really going to need. The second, maybe a little bit more controversial, but I think energy has taken on sometimes religious tones. You know, I'm a renewables person. You know, I'm a nuclear person. I believe in carbon capture. And we have a hard time looking across and realizing that done well, a lot of these can be low carbon or zero carbon. And given the pace at which we've got to deal with the climate crisis, we are going to need them all. We really do need them all. And so I do think, as much as I'm a huge fan of renewables and efficiency, carbon capture does have a place. I think a big place. Nuclear does have a place. It's far and away our largest zero carbon energy source in the United States and beyond. So let's move away from the kind of semi-religious approach we take to these energy sources and realize we got to put them all, we got to get them deployed if we're going to deal with the climate crisis.
Okay, and Nancy.
I'm just going to disagree with that just a little bit, not to end on a contentious note, but, you know, the entrepreneurs, they are religious. They don't want to do everything. They want to focus on what they believe is going to create billions of dollars of investor value and is going to change the world. And that's really, if you look at industrial progress, that's really how we've been able to get where we are today in terms of our quality of life and our economy. And so you have to make choices. And a lot of the best and brightest, you know, the Elon Musk of the world, they don't want to work on some of those. They don't believe in them. They have a very well thought out strategy. You may not agree with it, but they are in a position to hire a lot of people and create these products. And that's really the way our economy works. So we do have to make some choices. I believe there is a role for a multitude of approaches, but I'm not going to place bets in areas that aren't attracting the best and the brightest. And that takes, you know, you can disagree with it, but it takes a little religion.
No, I don't disagree.
Last comment.
I don't disagree, actually. I'm glad that Elon Musk and a variety of investors have that focus. Mine only is the nature of the urgency of the climate crisis, and we need to be encouraging investment, placing bets on a very broad range of technology, because we may not make it.
Okay, with that, we have to turn the podium over to the next panel, but I want to thank both Nancy and Dan.